So we're in our master tuning room right now, and all the bars in this room have been tuned within a quarter of a tone and all been vetted essentially. So they're either going to be a traditional, an enhanced, or premium bar. And what you see these cabinets over here and throughout this room, and basically we don't just have, for example, one D, we have like many Ds and D sharps and E's and F's. And what we do is we blend the keyboards together so that we can make everything as even as possible. If you only have a few different keyboards, your selection is so limited. And so here there's probably, I don't know, roughly 35 or so sets of 5-octave bars in here. And in the Rosewood library we first showed you, there's probably 60 to 80 more bars out there. So when we're setting up a keyboard, we start with the high C, the C7, and then we find a B that matches well, and then an A sharp, A, and on down. And if there's any bars we don't like, what we'll do is we'll go to the library and we'll go ahead and grab several of those, tune those down, and find the ones that best fit in. And that's how we've evolved our voicing of the instruments, so that you have many bars with which to select from, and that's what's really driven us to have a large volume of Rosewood in inventory, so we can always keep making lots of bars. When I started Marimba One, I was the tuner of Marimba One for many years, and eventually I hired this one particular person who became really the Marimba One master tuner, and I trained him, and he has a stellar ear. He's got an excellent sensibility about him, and he actually went to luthier school. And so Brian has been the Marimba One master tuner for over 20 years. And so the Marimba One instruments you've been hearing for the past 20 plus years have really been his vision of sound. We always discuss things. I believe we hear things in the same way, and we know how to articulate sound so that if there's a question, we can really closely identify it. The more we started to voice our keyboards and listen closer and closer, the more I realized we needed to have more bars with which to select from, and that's what actually drove me to source rosewood directly in Central America, so we could have much more control over our source of rosewood and also produce a greater volume of bars, so we always have this very significant library of tune bars from which to select out instruments. Okay, so here is a low E bar and a rather beautiful piece of rosewood, and we use strobe tuners, 12-wheel strobe tuners, and we like to use two 12-wheel strobe tuners simultaneously so we can see all the harmonics that we want to be looking at. And the basic harmonics on a marimba bar are, you have the fundamental, and you can see here, you can see E here. Check this out here. There it is. See how it's, now here's the double octave. Are you catching that?
Oh yeah.
There's the E, and now there's a 10th tuned in there, which I'm going to dampen in another spot. The 10th's going to be a G sharp. There it is up there, and slightly stretched sharp. And along with tuning the longitudinal vibrations of the bars, there's also, if you imagine the bar, there's a line down the middle, and one half tends to ring higher or lower than the other half, although this one actually, there's a slight little adjustment here to balance the two. And the idea of balancing the bar is that if you've ever played a marimba bar, that when you strike it, it sounds like there's two notes that are, you know, roughly a quarter tone away from each other, and the bar self-cancels itself out. So one of the arts of tuning marimba bars is making sure that the bar is vibrating in unison. So you can have an amazing piece of rosewood. This is a terrific piece of rosewood, and if it's not tuned properly, it won't ring well. So just because you start with a great piece of rosewood does not necessarily mean in any way that it's going to have a great sound. So the job of the tuner is to essentially get this piece of wood to relax. That's the whole idea. And on different ranges of the marimba, from the high C down, particularly the higher end of the marimba, there's all these different behaviors of the wood. And at the top octave and a half, there's a torsional twisting of the piece of wood. And so there's different tricks we have for identifying that and then tuning that out, so once again it rings in unison. And so that's how I always think of tuning, is getting the piece of wood to relax. And when it relaxes, it'll ring the longest.